It's 5 o'clock on Friday, and that means it's happy hour, gang. Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour webcast from WhiskyCast.com. I'm Mark Gillespie in the WhiskyCast studio in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Hope it's been a great week for you so far. This is one of those days where I wish we could be out on the front porch. If you saw some of the pictures yesterday that I posted on social media, yesterday was just one of these glorious days. Temperature right around 70 degrees or so, about 20 degrees Celsius. And just a lovely day outside. Was spent most of the afternoon on the porch working on my laptop with Bristow, the wonder dog, laying on the porch beside me. But today it's raining. And if it hadn't been raining, we would have been out on the front porch again today. So it is one of those days. And because it's raining, we're going to run into some technical fun and games today that is going to make this just a bit interesting. When you get one of those emails about 20 minutes or so before the show starts from one of your guests saying, we're in storms and the power just went out, I may not be able to join you. That's the case in Charlotte, where Clay Whitaker lives, and hopefully he will be able to join us by phone. Hopefully the power will come back up. They were having some very severe winds in the Charlotte area and some nasty weather, and hopefully we will be able to get him on the show here in the next few minutes or so. But meanwhile, we will soldier on. We have our guests. This is the Friday Writers panel. Joining me now in the middle of the screen, Colin Hampden-White, joining us from the UK, part of the Three Drinkers group that has expanded into the podcast arena in addition to Amazon Prime. And Marisel Salazar joins us from New York City. How are you today, Marisel?
Hey. I'm doing great, you know. When you say it's Friday, I don't really think time has any meaning anymore.
Time has no meaning anymore. You're right, for any of us. I mean, if you know it's Friday, we know it's Friday because it's the Happy Hour webcast. That's how we tell time around here. Wednesday is Whiskey Wednesday, Friday is the Happy Hour podcast, and Sunday night we do a new WhiskyCast.
Yeah.
Colin, how are you holding up?
Or Fifth Monday, as I like to call it.
Yeah. I'm very good, actually. It's 10 o'clock in London at the moment, or just past 10 o'clock. So I'm still enjoying the last of my wine that I've had for dinner. I've got a 2002 Fleury from Beaujolais, but I've got some great whiskey. And I was just looking right behind your head, Mark. You're a bit of a Redbreast fan. You quite like Redbreast.
Yes, well, let's be honest. They are one of our sponsors and have been for many years. And I have the new 28-year-old sample about 10 feet here. I like that one.
It's delicious, isn't it?
That's not the Dream Cask. That's is that the Dream Cask?
That's the Dream Cask. Yeah.
Son of a. Never mind.
It's on ballot coming up. I think the 25th. They open up the ballot.
I have a wee sample of it that I have to share. Mm-hmm. But you have the whole bottle. How you got that? Doesn't even go on sale until Monday, for crying out loud.
Yeah. We're very lucky. We've been doing a little bit of work with Redbreast and shouting about the ballot that's coming up on the 25th. So they kindly sent me a bottle.
It is hard to get a full-size bottle over here because of the.
Well, I've got to share it with the other guys as well. Okay. I was honest. I did tell them that it had arrived. So yeah, it's not all mine.
So Marisel, what have you got in your glass?
What have I got in my glass?
Oh my God!
I'm talking to Marisel. Sorry, Marisel. You got your Beaujolais.
You know, is it sacrilegious to say that I have water right now?
That's all right.
Once it hits Saturdays, that's when I get into the festivity. You know, because for me, I know, Colin. You know, it's quitting time over there. But for me, even after this, I still have a little bit of a work to slug on through. So I'm waiting for, I think it's going to be 7:30 when I officially end my day, and then I can crack into actually a cocktail that I've been really wanting to make, which is a Chancellor. I'm dying for a Chancellor right now.
Well, we won't stop you if you want to have something. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'll just
We're in a
pop off and
profession
make a
where
mix.
we can drink when we work.
Out, hydration is important. Hey, if you have comments and you're watching and you have something to say, whether it's a question or a comment, feel free to say something. Feel free to go ahead and add it in the comments window in whatever platform you're watching us on, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Periscope. As always, if you're watching us on Twitter, don't respond in Twitter because we won't see that till after the show, and we won't have a chance to get your comments in. Frank Moreno, Slancha, our pal Raj Sabrawal, a great way to start the weekend. Happy long weekend, Mark. Same to you, Raj, and to everybody else out there. Matus North says hello, and our pal Ashley Penny from Ireland says evening all, and I'll bet Ashley is a wee bit jealous of that redbreast as well.
Well,
So
into the ballot.
Have you yet?
Have I what, sorry?
Have you tasted the redbreast yet?
I have. Yeah, I have. I tasted it when it arrived. I think it's fantastic. It's kind of a bit like it's almost like a big daddy to the 27-year-old port that they've got out there at the moment. It's just got that little bit of extra depth, that little bit of extra oomph. So, I mean, to a certain extent, okay, if you enter the ballot and you don't manage to buy a bottle, go and buy the 27 port-year-old. It's a fantastic liquid.
Oh, the 27 is one. That's until I've not tasted the 28 yet, but the Dream Cask, but the 27 is actually the second highest score I've ever given a redbreast. I think I scored it 96 or 97, and the only one that beat it was the 32-year-old original Dream.
Oh, that was amazing, that thing. Yes. Yeah, I remember when they originally sent out the samples for that. They didn't tell anybody what it was. They just said, taste this. And it was just phenomenal. And then they said, that actually, this is what it is. It's a 32-year-old. And it was like, okay, now it makes sense. So yeah, great whiskey.
Marisel, tell us about United States of Spirits and also your show that you do on MSG Network's Driven to Dine.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Colin, I know we're making acquaintances from across the pond, but over here in New York City, I am actually a food and travel and drink writer for Michelin Guide, for Vine Pair. I've been the intersection of food and drink for quite a long time now. And what I really was in was covered food and wine pairings for such a long time, which is a very classic subject to cover. And so when I started working with the Spirits Network, we thought, okay, why don't we pair cocktails with food? You know, everybody's favorite cocktail. And I'm sure they're wondering, like, let's not just have this fly solo. You know, we really wanted to present a balanced mix of blends, approaches, and flavors, you know, that are all aiming to evolve the perception of Scotch drinking beyond just neat or on the rocks. And that's what United States of Spirits is all about. You know, it's part drink, part food, part travel. And the pilot episode is based here in New York City. And, you know, I got to tell you, Mark, I worked with some really incredible chefs and beverage directors as we were filming the show. You know, it was at the Jaime Mowry of La Fanfare. I got to work with Megan Dorman, incredible beverage director over at Dear Irving. And then, of course, actually, Colin, someone from your neck of the woods, he's a pastry chef, Rory McDonald. He's a formerly patisserie Shamson. You do know him. Yeah, he's absolutely incredible. So for the premiere episode, we got to all come together to explore the intersection of food and drink. And namely, it was with Johnny Walker Black and Johnny Walker Gold, which were absolutely incredible whiskeys to pair with food.
Yeah, Johnny Walker Black, all-time favorite whiskey. If I don't know what to drink, just put a bit of that in the glass. It's just well-made stuff, consistent, great, and God, it's not expensive.
Absolutely.
Love pairing.
It's amazing that the Johnny Walker Gold has these incredible honey flavors that just lend itself particularly to dessert pairings. You know, that honey was incredible. And then you have the Johnny Walker Black, you know, which we use in, you know, some Chancellors that we made in the Gibson, you know, Megan. At taking, you know, these classic drinks and then ramping them up a notch just through her whiskey choices.
We have a comment from Travis Adams, says, this is the fifth or so of these I have attended. I've learned to start with beer. It's only 2 p.m. here, and if I start with early, so it's pale ale time. Good move, Travis. Responsible.
I hear you, Travis.
Yeah, and while Marisel was talking, I went over to the desk and reached over and got the Dream Cask sample.
Ah, fantastic.
So
excellent. Well, why don't we? I might pour a little bit, and we can share a dram.
So I just.
Cask, you know,
have you finished?
Have you girl a bottle?
I'm sorry. What?
Have you finished your sample,
Instead of
Mark?
Dreamcast wants to send over a bottle for New York City.
We'll have to see if we can pull some strings. This may be one of the few samples that actually made it over to the U.S. See, you got the big bottle. I got the little wee sample.
Well, you know what was remarkable? You see the samples pop up very occasionally, in auctions.
You don't like that.
Oh God, no! But they get ridiculous prices.
It's unethical to begin with because they're being given out.
Completely unethical.
This is one of my pet peeves. I hate it when people take press samples and sell them.
Totally. That's not what they're for.
People do that?
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
That's completely illegal in America.
Well, it's also unethical because
completely.
Correct.
I mean, I remember several years ago when the folks at Ardbeg, when Hamish Torrey went just absolutely ballistic. The year of the World Cup, I think it was in 2012, when it was in Brazil, and they did the Ore Verdes bottling.
Yeah.
They did 50 of these gold-painted Ore Verdes bottles that they sent out to various media and friends of Ardbeg.
Yeah.
It wasn't a month after that one of those wound up on eBay or something. And after they started numbering their samples so that if it ever wound up on an auction market, they could tell who sent it out and who was selling their stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That just drives walls when people do that.
It was nuts. I mean, I think that bottle raised £2,000 at auction, which was, on the one hand, great for Ardbeg because it hit all the headlines and it gave them an amazing amount of PR. But on the other hand, it opened up that whole can of worms of press samples finding their way back onto the internet. The only time that I would ever dispose of a sample is if I get given one by the provider, the producer, and one by the PR. And then I might very openly have one put to auction for a charity. And that's the only time I've ever sold a press sample.
The only time,
that's great.
I will say there's one exception. And this was after Superstorm Sandy a few years ago, when our friend Robin Robinson was organizing an auction to raise money for the American Red Cross. And I had an extra Mortlock 75-year-old sample from Gordon MacPhail, the press kit. Because
I remember the long black box.
Separate press kit. So I cleared it with Michael Urquhart at Gordon and MacPhail first and said, would you have any objection if I donated this to that auction so that somebody else can taste it, because I've already tasted it. And with their blessing, we donated it, and they were able to raise some money from it, and somebody else got to taste it. But
that's great.
That's the only condition that, with all the samples that I've got back here, what we've done in the past is I'll donate an occasional charity tasting for an auction.
Yeah.
Where I'll take
and then they come out
to somebody's house and pour them.
Yeah, I've done that quite frequently, actually. Yeah, charity tastings. We do. We often put ourselves to auction as the three drinkers, where we come and do the wine service, and we do that with a chef. So we pair up with the guy who's just won MasterChef The Professionals. He's a great friend of ours, and so we do the wine, he does the food, and then we might have some end of dinner drinks, and the whiskey comes out. And so it's nice to bring something special along to them. Yeah. And so some of the samples find their way into those after dinner drinks. And
I'll pour them for our tasting panel podcasts and things like that. So tell us about the driven to dram, I think, or driven to drink. I'm sorry, I forgot the name of it, Marisel.
Driven to dine. Definitely not driven to drink.
I'm sorry.
My sponsor, Lexus, might have a little bit of a problem with that.
I'm sorry.
I actually have a quick question for you guys before I get
driving, I think of something completely different, so it's okay. Go ahead.
Totally. I have a quick question before I jump into this. Would you fellas do me a favor and provide me some tasting notes with what you're drinking, since I'm seething with curiosity?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the predominant flavors I get on this on the fruit side are plums, and there's a little bit of sort of damson, which is a little bit lighter than dark plums. There's a little bit of black cherry. There's some tropical fruit in it, which is very typically redbreast, and it's still there. The core of the dram is still redbreast. And then there's some nice dried fruits. There's some little dates, touches of raisins, bitter black chocolate. And it changes as the dram goes on. I don't know what about you, Mark, but I find this airs well. It gets more complex as you give it a bit of oxygen.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. I'm getting the fresh berries, a little bit of orange, a nice brown sugar note out of it too, a little bit of molasses in the background, a little bit of treacle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Treacle,
so in your opinion, would you say this would be definitely good after dinner, perhaps maybe a mild dessert pairing?
Absolutely. I would pair this with, say, if we're going to pair it with the dessert, I would put it with a good, say, like a good berry cobbler.
Yes.
A good call, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think we have an idea for our next episode of the United States of Spirits.
In answer to Greg in Paris, yes, we are.
Yeah. We just to prove it, there it is. And you can get one too if you enter their ballot. There's a portal to the ballot. Either if you're a member of the Birdhouse, obviously you can go straight there, or if you go through the threedrinkers.com /redbreast, that'll take you there to the ballot from the 25th. The ballot opens on the 25th.
And we have to point out that this will not be coming to the United States because they only make it in 500 bottles, which are illegal in the U.S., and Redbreast also can't sell directly to consumers. So that's why they sell it through the Birdhouse. So we don't get to get it in the U.S. So this is, we did get one bottle last year that we were able to pour at Julio's in the Boston area at a Redbreast tasting. They sent me a bottle to pour at one tasting, and we can only hope. Hello from Whiskey Canuck, the Montreal branch of the Whiskey Fabric, checking in. Malt Mariner is keeping it dry tonight. Hello again to Greg. David Owen, good evening, everyone, from a wet Hanover in Germany. Long time no see. Greg's here all the time. Was actually on the show a couple of weeks ago. Bob went, our buddy from Malt Stock. 35.251. I'm assuming that's a Scotch Malt Whiskey Society.com expression. And let's see who else is checking in with us. We have a good question here while we're talking about this from Chris Ratcliffe. How much does a mainstream audience care about tasting notes compared to stories of people or places or the like? And Marisel, let's start with you. How much do you think the audience cares?
You know, I was going to say, that's exactly my alley. When I talk about the intersection of food and drink, it's mostly the stories about the people, the artisans, the makers. You know, you can have a beautiful product, but your product is only as compelling as you are. So if you have something great, does it even exist without a story? So that's where I come in. You know, if I see something wonderful that I think, you know, other people might be interested in, it's my job to help sell that story. You know, of course, never fabricate anything, but you know, that's what United States of Spirits is about. It's telling the stories behind the drinks. You know, for example, where did a drink like the Chancellor come from? How is it being reinvented? That's what makes spirits interesting. Of course you have to start with a great product, but you know, that's what I do on Michelin Guide as well. We talk about food and drink pairings on Michelin Guide. We interview mixologists for wine to speak to sommeliers and winemakers, because you know, even you know, like myself, I've never tasted what Greg and Mark are drinking, but I'm so compelled just by who they are and what they do to try it out for myself. So you've already got me. You've sold me on the story.
Colin?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that tasting notes are okay as far as you could say something is a smoky whiskey so that you're aware, or just to even simply say that I think this is good. If you respect a particular whiskey writer or a particular drinks journalist, just for them to say, yeah, I think this is good. And if you read my stuff and you think that your palate is similar to mine, then you're going to like this. But otherwise, yeah, it is, what is it? It's more than the liquid itself. It is where it comes from, absolutely. And it's the whole story behind it. And those stories tend to be fascinating and interesting. So yeah, I agree with you. Tasting notes they're okay. I think they're more useful actually when you go into something like Master of Malt or the Whiskey Exchange and you're trying to buy a bottle and decide between bottles. then you can get a rough idea of your flavor profile and the whiskey that you're buying. Quite useful then, but no, people spouting lots and lots and lots of tasting notes, pretty unnecessary.
Great comment here from Whiskey Wings. I think the Balvenie Stories range proved it. Fantastic experience having a dram and listening along. And we lost Marisel for a second there, but she's back. And we have a question for you.
Et voila.
I'm sorry, what? Go ahead.
And we're back.
You're back. We have a question for you, Colin, from our friend David Fankel. On the Three Drinkers episode, when you visited the Macallan, did Helena really pass up on tasting the Macallan ale?
Well, one of us did have to drive. No, she didn't. What we did is we took a sample away with us so that she could try it later. So she certainly had some, but just not whilst we were driving. We had some scenes to do after that in which we were actually in a car driving. So it wasn't faked. We do have a designated driver each day, who is the person who is going to be filmed driving in the car that day, so they can't drink.
You don't have the budget for a regular driver just to drive the three of you around?
Well, yeah. I did insure one of the makeup artists for my car so that I didn't have to drive my car around, because I took my car up to Scotland, which was very handy, I can tell you.
That's actually something we had to do on Driven to Dine, the other show that I have with MSG Networks. I was actually, and I knew I was a real New Yorker when I was driving through Friday evening traffic in Manhattan. I felt like a cabbie, alongside, and we were out to various different restaurants eating and drinking, but we had to, one of us was the DD, because when we were filming our car scenes, one of us had to make sure that, we kept everybody safe. And Lexus was amazing. They make some pretty incredible safe cars. And, to your point, you have to watch out for each other. So it was actually really great experience. But yes, we kept samples for ourselves later to drink at home.
We have a great comment from Malt Mariners. We always share the journey, how whiskey performs and changes, what experience it takes you on. Tasting notes are part of the deal for us, but we're not taking that part too seriously in our tastings. Can't take any of this too seriously. It's only whiskey, gang. Let's be realistic here. This is not the end of the world, and everybody's got their own nose. What you get may be completely different from what I get, and what I'm getting off this is really good.
Yeah, I think that I've been approached before to say that when we say that we have different noses and what you might get is different, that's an excuse for just really actually just not getting it right. So I've taken various whiskies with those people and gone, okay, well, what do you get from that? I'll write down what I get and then put it in an envelope. You write down what you get, and we'll just see how different they are. And invariably, they are different.
We have a good question, another one from Chris Ratcliffe, who asks some very good questions on all of these. Is there a food and drink documentary you'd recommend to people that you especially love? Marisel, you got one?
Well, maybe you should watch United States of Spirits over on the Spirits Network. And actually, just so you guys can check it out, Spirits Network, outside of having my show, United States of Spirits, has incredible spirits-related content. It's more than 100 hours of original content, and they're long-form documentaries to interviews from the top figures in the world of spirits. You guys should be on it, actually. But if you also don't want to just watch, the storytelling behind spirits, you can actually tune into mixology classes and expand your cocktail making skills, which is really neat. So what I thought I would do, Mark, too, just as kind of a bonus for everyone that's listening in right now, you can get 20% off any one of the plans by using a code, which it would be okay. I can drop it here, or we can share it after we chat. It's Marisel VIP. So if you choose one of our plans, you can have access to parts of the site. And what's really neat about it is it's shoppable. So you watch the content, you can learn how to make a cocktail, but you can also directly buy straight from the site as you're watching. And I've done it many times. And what's really neat is we're actually expanding into wine soon. So you can also shop the wine there. But yes, United States of Spirits is one of the few shows that shows spirits and food pairings, particularly with whiskey. So, gotta love my Johnny Walker Black and my Johnny Walker Gold. Like, it is incredible to pair with food. I would suggest checking out United States of Spirits.
Okay, Colin?
Well, okay, we've got. Sorry?
I should have said a documentary that isn't yours.
Yeah, quite. We've got a very good program in the UK. I don't know whether it's out in the States. Probably not, because it's on the BBC. And it is basically a cookery show with a drinks expert on board. And they've done all sorts of drinks. They've done spirits, they've done wine, they've even done water. And it's fantastic. The spirits guy, drinks guy, sorry, on that show is a guy called Joe Vadsak. And he's larger than life. And it's hugely entertaining. It's on BBC Two. So I don't know whether you can get some of the BBC shows in the States. I know some of them are around, but I think it's just called Food and Drink. If you search Food and Drink on the BBC, it's a great show.
I think some of them are region gated, so that you can't always get them outside of the UK. It may be available somewhere. And I'll give you one that I've enjoyed watching was the Amber Light, which starred Dave Broom, and I've seen it a couple of times now, and I thought it really told more of a personal story, but also really engaged the Scottish culture as well, not just whiskey, but in writing, in music, in art, and in its many forms. I thought it was a great story, and hopefully here in the next couple of months or so, we should start seeing it streaming through
fantastic
streaming services. I know
that again, Mark. I'm going to write that down.
The Amber Light.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a great film, and it's a proper documentary film. Dave Broom did another one on Cuba with rum. I can't remember what that was called. It might simply have been The Spirit of Cuba or something like that. Also, absolutely excellent, and it does look at the culture of the spirit so well, and the country. He's a very, very skilled documentary maker.
And our pal Bill Ricker points out that the BBC is so careful about regional rights that it's hard to get domestic content outside. But as he points out, you can always get a UK-based VPN and system that way. Dave Kuhn also points out the Oz and James series are fantastic.
They are. I know both of those guys pretty well, and they're fantastic. Really good series. And I especially love the one that was done ages ago in California. It was hilarious.
And our pal Greg points out food and spirit stock is hard to pick, but he'll recommend anything from our good friend Martine Nouet, the most famous French whiskey writer, but also a food and whiskey pairing expert. And she does not pay Greg. She doesn't pay anyone. She is that good. If I have a question about food and whiskey pairing, Martine's the first person I would go to in about 2 seconds flat, because she nails it every year. Scotch, a Golden Dream or Golden Dram, the one with Jim McEwen that was out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. Jim's always entertaining. Actually, I watched that again about 2 weeks ago. How sad am I? It's been around for a while, but it's a great show. I really liked it. It was when he was back at Brewer Cladding.
And as Greg points out, the Amber Light still has not yet been shown in France, and probably won't be for quite a while yet here right now. And our pal Joanne McInnes up in New Brunswick points out that Martine can pair whiskey with just about anything, as she does every year at the New Brunswick Spirits Festival. Can't do it this year because the festival's already been canceled because of the pandemic. And let's turn to that now. When do you think we're going to start traveling again and going to actually able to enjoy a dram together somewhere?
Well, if Trump has his way, tomorrow.
Colin?
I said if Trump has his way, tomorrow.
Well, but your government just announced a 14-day self-isolation period starting, I think, June 8th, for anybody that comes in after June 8th.
Yeah. We're not quite sure
coming over anytime soon, because I can't do 2 weeks in a hotel before I go visiting anybody.
Absolutely. How could you afford that?
I know it's tough. I think that with our government, they're playing catch up, and they're now being a bit more strict than they were originally. We should have gone into lockdown earlier, and we wouldn't have had such a high death toll, basically. I mean, different countries have different death tolls for different reasons, but I think we could have done a bit better. I'm not fully up to date on what's going on in your country, except that there is a lot of conflicting information coming out. I've gone and panic bought disinfectants just on the back of what's been said in the States.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of bad information, a lot of bad advice. But Marisel, tell us how you're coping in New York because you're still on lockdown too, right?
Yep, absolutely. And unfortunately, I'm at the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States, and we just keep having our stay-at-home orders increased and increased because of whether it's bad policy or just lack of compliance from the citizens themselves. It's tough to be in a very dense urban area, particularly also it's the primary place of food and drink in the United States. So it's actually, I don't know about you over there in the UK, but it's taken such a hit on our economy, on our brothers and sisters that are working in food and beverage, and it truly breaks my heart. But the unity that I've seen come together in terms of restaurants and bars actually working together for the first time. And I'm curious to know, we're really looking at this from a food writer's perspective because we have a topical bird's eye view of what's going to happen across our country and perhaps internationally. We're going to be seeing, at least this is my prediction, a lot of bars and restaurants partnering together and working in unison in order to reopen, just because you can't have a restaurant open at 70% capacity. It's just not worth it for the operators who are working there, especially given loans that we have in the United States, like PPP. It just does not make sense to hire then refire your mixologist, your bartenders, your whomever all over again. So my biggest food prediction in the way that food and drink will operate coming through this as we slowly start to reopen is we're going to see a lot more restaurants and bars working together, and then those same restaurants and bars catering to the at-home population. So we can have these virtual bar hangouts while doing them safely, like we're doing right now.
I like the idea of the to-go cocktails that we're starting to see, that the states are actually saying they may make this permanent after this is all over with because
it's all New Orleans.
Handle it responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, a lot of the smaller pubs in small villages open themselves up as the local shop, but then we're also doing takeaway pints, so that you can go in, get your shopping, and then grab a pint or two and take it home and sit and drink it in your garden. And I think that sort of thing might continue. I'd like to think it would.
Have you heard about the gentleman who is doing the pints to go? He's driving around in a big truck and serving pints from his truck directly to the community.
Ooh, a beer.
That's a great idea.
It's he's got it directly. He's got the keg directly hooked up to the car, and he pours the pints from the car, and he passes them out to the community so that they won't have to go to the pub and potentially risk themselves.
I need that in my neighborhood.
It's the new ice cream.
That's a great idea.
We have a great comment from Whiskey Wings. Maybe we can get Milroy's to create a room for you to self-isolate in, Mark. I kind of like that. The 2 weeks would fly by. Yes, they would. And then I'd be doing 28 days of rehab after that, I'm afraid. And I hope to meet you all the beginning of October at the London Whisky Show at Old Billingsgate. As far as we know, that one is still going to go on. I'll be hearing a little bit about that later this coming days, but I know they announced this week they're hoping to do a virtual component as well. But that is my next planned trip, is to go over the first weekend of October for that, to go to London and see you guys over that for that show, if we can make it work, because I can't justify 14 days of self-isolation on both ends of the trip for a 3-day show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hope it runs. But I'm hoping also that they've got a backup plan to try and at least have something if it doesn't. I think that big group gatherings, I think, will be lucky, to be honest, by the end of the year in the UK, if big group gatherings like that are possible. But by doing a virtual component of it, they can then expand that virtual component if they can't do the big show. It's a tough one. I mean, we just have to sit and wait and see, which is, rough.
Colin, I have a question for you. Seeing as you're our UK correspondent right now, what do you think Britain is going to be like without the pub? It's such a quintessential part of the British experience and culture, and to think that that might not be part of the fabric of food and drink anymore. What does that say about, Britons as a culture?
I mean, obviously the pub will come back as soon as lockdown is over. pubs will reopen and we'll all gather together again. In the meantime, there are quite a lot of virtual pubs at the moment, and they're not being created by pubs themselves as brands or as institutions. They're being created just by the people who would normally go to them. So they are creating, I don't know. So Billy Abbott does something. He's a whiskey guy over here on a Friday night, where basically everybody joins in a virtual pub, and we just do what we do in our living rooms: sit, drink, chat, natter away, rather than actually being in the pub. What I find is interesting about this concept is that you'll get 20 or 30 people coming to the pub and meeting and drinking and chatting. Whilst if you actually just go to the pub, you might only go with 2 or 3 mates.
Right.
So actually you're seeing more of your friends on a Friday evening than you would otherwise. And they're all over the world now, as we are now.
Do you feel like you get the same feeling out of it? Because honestly, I've done, and maybe Mark, you've done this too already, so much what we're doing now. I've done the Zoom chats with, friends of mine, and we each have a drink. I promise it's not just water all the time. We've done the Zoom chats, and it doesn't feel the same to me. I feel less engaged than I would if I was, you could actually see my every move and my every breath.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. It can't replace the real thing. But there are minor advantages, like being able to have a conversation with 20 people from all over the world, rather than just 2 or 3 mates that you can fit into your schedule to go down to the pub with. So, there are swings and roundabouts. No, it doesn't replace the real thing. Yeah. But one has to sort of just take the advantages as they come.
And as Malt Mariners points out, for me, the whole idea of a pub is the exact opposite of social distancing. So no high hopes for the good atmosphere in UK pubs as they used to be. Whiskey Wings, I'm taking part in the Somerton Whiskey Festival next weekend, which moved online. They've arranged a load of different samples, snacks, and hosts. It's a good test of what the major shows may have to do. I was just talking with one of the show organizers in Australia by email yesterday, and he's saying that their virtual shows have been so successful that they may well continue those even after lockdowns end and they can have real shows again in person. Just because
that's amazing.
Bring the samples to somebody's house, you can drink them and watch the videos over several days, as opposed to trying to do it all in one night.
Oof, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I hope to see Whiskey Wings there. I'm going to be nattering away with people at the Somerton Whiskey Festival. Actually, the guy I was talking about earlier on the Food and Drink program on the BBC, he's also going to be one of the guests there, Joe Fadzak. So anyway, Whiskey Wings. I will see you at that festival.
And Nicholas Nastasi said, I'm all zoomed out, definitely not the same.
I hear you, Nicholas.
Yep. Mike Caldwell is going past the pretzels with the emoji. And Whiskey Wings, Greg wants to know, will that Somerton Festival be on YouTube even if I'm not part of it? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. We can try to find out and see if we can post something on Twitter about that. And I had switched over. The Redbreast, the Dream Cask was not going to be the dram I was going to pour. I've switched back over to that one. It is the one I was going to pour is the new Balcones Texas Bock.
Oh.
That they did in collaboration with Spetzel Brewery, the Shiner Bock Brewers in Shiner, Texas, where they took the same grain mash bill from the same suppliers and the same mash bill that Shiner uses, or Spetzel uses to make Shiner Bock, and got the same lagering yeast, the proprietary yeast from the brewery, to make it with.
Okay.
The only thing missing is the hops. And they did it for a couple of years, and I just posted my tasting notes for it before the show at the website, and I was really impressed with this one. It's hard to say. It's hard.
Is it the usual high strength? Is it high strength? How much?
50% ABV.
Oh, okay. So it's moderate. It's moderate for Balcones.
And we have an answer to our question about the Somerton Festival from Luna Aaron. You have to buy tickets and then get an email with a link to take part. So that means that we and
I'll
comments.
Be surprised if
here.
I'll be surprised if there isn't some form or other or some way of joining inexpensively without having to buy the whiskies. There must be some sort of way, or it'll be recorded. I mean, people can go and have a look at it afterwards. But I think that when you buy your tickets, you're being sent whiskies. So it's predominantly for people in Europe, clearly.
Yeah,
But actually,
overseas, because we already checked into that earlier. So
yeah, absolutely. But on the plus side is that somebody who wouldn't normally be able to travel to the Somerton Whisky Show can now take part.
right, because that would have been just a little small local whiskey show in St. Albans up there, and now they've got a reach all over Europe and maybe attract people who will travel there once they can. Wait a second, Martine's on with us. Except
Martine. Hey, Martine.
Okay.
It's a
Martine. I've never seen Martine jump on here before.
Maybe the word has spread about these food and drink pairings.
About you, Martine. Hang on a second here. I'm going to see if we can convince Martine to join us real quickly here. I couldn't join us because of the weather. Martine, email. If you can join us,
Martine,
have you?
Are you still going to try and do some IWSC judging, Martine, this year if they manage to find a plan?
I'm sorry, what?
I was just wondering if Martine was intending to do.
Just seeing us on the comments, so we'd have to see if she. And Luna wants to know if asking Greg if Martine's joining was your doing, right? No, I think because Martine lives on Isla, and right now Isla's in complete lockdown. So it'd be if we can get Martine on, I've sent her the link to jump in here, and if we can get Martine on, I'd love to have you. If you have a few minutes to join us, Martine, please do.
I would love to hear her thoughts on some of the pairings that we did in the show, especially since she's a pairing expert, and see if, let's get Martine's critique on how these chefs did on United States of Spirits and pairing some whiskey cocktails.
So let's see, and let's move on real quickly. And one of the things we found out today was that Teeling Whiskey in Dublin opened its distillery shop and the cafe for the first time in 10 weeks. And that came as a complete surprise because I thought they were going to be locked down for a couple of more weeks yet.
Yeah.
But Stephen Teeling confirmed that to us today. I know that at least 4 of the distilleries in Kentucky, 4 of the smaller ones, have opened their gift shops under the reopening orders now. But we saw Wednesday, Glenfarclas said they will not even try to open up their gift shop and visitor center for the rest of this year. Are we going to see sort of conflicts between regions here where some regions move faster and some move slower? Or is there going to be a rush to try to jump in and reopen as soon as you can?
Not at all. I don't think so. It's all about the consumer perspective of what is safe and what is not. You know, I was just recently interviewed on another show regarding, even if all restaurants, gift shops, and bars open today, it's really the consumer who has the purchasing power, and what is their confidence. We have to know, what are these establishments doing in terms of sanitation, in terms of hygiene, to make people feel safe right now. You know, it's something around 89% of consumers said that they still would not go to restaurants even if they opened tomorrow, which is huge, without, you know, the caveat is without knowing what the restaurant, the bar, the establishment, what steps are they taking to make sure that they have proper sanitation.
And I just want to point out, Michael Caldwell knows that it's Hammer time, and no, we're not talking about MC Hammer. That's dinner being prepared upstairs, and somebody came to my head apparently, so using a little extra force. But Colin, what were you going to say here? Go ahead, jump in.
I can't remember. Sorry, I was just following.
We were talking
what you're having
transition here and getting things reopened and trying to get things back to normal.
Oh yes, I think it's going to depend also on how businesses are financially. How do they work? If they've got staff that are furloughed, we call them furloughed, where in this country you can furlough a member of staff and the government pays 80% of their wages. Mm. And yeah, our government has done that.
Amazing.
And if you've got a small gift shop, so you've got to weigh up. If you bring that person out of furlough, you've then got to pay 100% of their wages. are you going to then have a profitable shop? How many people are going to come into your shop during this particular time? So Glenfarclas might have decided that actually, and also on a secondary thing, we value our staff. We do not want them getting sick. So we are just going to close the shop for the rest of the summer. Whiskey's a long-term game. So closing a shop for a summer, yeah, that's a summer.
I talked with George Grant about this on Wednesday, and on one of the things that really struck home for them, they lost a person to COVID-19. One of the workers in their bottling hall died.
Oh, gosh.
So that sort of sealed it for them in terms of trying to protect their staff. But it would have been a month ago that they would have already hired all their temporary summer workers in time for the Spirit of Speyside Festival. And they expect to be locked down for at least another month. So at most, they would be maybe have 2 to 3 weeks of work for those people if they reopened at that point. Right. And what they decided to do was also just keep the store closed and the gift shop and send people to buy bottles in the villages nearby, like Aberlour and Elgin, and support the retailers there rather than try to compete with them. Yeah,
that's a very sensible idea.
I'm wondering, in both of your experiences, if you've seen an uptick in, Mark, I'm sure you're more familiar with this since they're United States based, but, Colin, just in case they exist in the UK, services like Drizzly or Wink being utilized in order to have these subscriptions and these deliveries to consumers' homes for, consuming at home and therefore consuming in relative safety. It's been huge. It's something like I read 300% increase in the amount of Drizzly subscribers over the course of a 2-month span.
Yeah, we've had a big uplift here as well. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but here getting alcohol delivered is easy. It comes in it comes in your supermarket shopping. You don't have any specialist retailers and so on. And we do have the specialist retailers which have kept their businesses going, like the Whisky Exchange or Master of Malt. So yes, they're doing pretty well. The people who are specifically set up for that doing better than others. People who are normally retail orientated through a shop, physical shop, are finding it difficult to manage the amount of orders. We had 2 wine companies that actually stopped delivering because they had so many orders come in, so that they could catch up before starting again. But their wine delivery service is only a fraction of their main business. So they're still losing money, even though that part of the business is incredibly busy right now. They're getting there. Do you guys have supermarket deliveries with booze in the States? Is that a thing?
In some areas where it's legal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Instacart doesn't, for instance, they don't deliver booze from the grocery stores. In our state, most grocery stores can't sell alcohol at all, except through a separate store. You have 50 different sets of 51 with DC, different sets of legislation. And it really is a bureaucratic nightmare to figure out where home delivery is legal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why Drizzly has really taken off the way it could here if you had a nationwide system of regulation like the UK has.
Yeah. I believe that the Spirits Network, you're nationwide as well, aren't you? You can be 50 states and you can order directly through the program.
That's
to wherever.
Exactly right.
But there's
I'm glad that you said that.
But there's still 15 or 20 states you can't ship to because they don't allow shipments.
Exactly. And that's also, on the similar vein, that's what makes reopening so difficult in the United States because, it's up to each independent state's governor, what phase of reopening that they want, and generally speaking, bars and restaurants always come into phase 3. At least in New York City, they'll come into the phase 3 of reopening in every major metropolitan city or state that contains a major city, which is a really big shame, for the folks in the food and drink industry right now, because regardless of, PPP, they will have to wait to even use their PPP if they are so lucky as a small business to get it, fighting amongst other large corporations. Okay, use the PPP for a few weeks just to fire your employees again. It doesn't, unfortunately, just really, there's a lot of hiccups in the reaction to our planning. And, cheers to you guys over in the UK, and Denmark, I know, has a similar structure where they're paying their workers, 80% of their former salary as well. So, I really, God bless America, but we definitely, the one thing that I always say that we can agree on as Americans is that we disagree. That is the single value we all hold together.
We have a great comment from PT Wood at Woods High Mountain Distillery out in Salina, Colorado. We reopened the tasting room for on-premise cocktails today at 25% capacity. Lots of distancing, masks, and sanitizer. Feel pretty good about it. Good luck, PT. I hope it stays that way. I hope everything works out for you out in Colorado. We don't want to see a recurrence of this. And our pal Billy Layton from Redbreast Distillery agrees with Colin. The most valuable thing in the business is patience.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know whether you were on earlier, Billy, but we were talking about the Dream Cask. It's a pretty impressive dram. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. And let's see here. And Laddie, the whiskey nerd, 90% of my orders pre-COVID were already online here in the Netherlands.
Wow.
I think if we can get to the point where it's legal and where it's easy and where people can trust it, I think you're going to see more of that. I think it's only going to be the wave of the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't walked into a shop to buy a bottle of whiskey for years in the UK. I mean, the shops, for a start, the independent shops are not like yours in the States. They don't hold the amount of liquid unless you go to the Whisky Exchange in London. They've got 3 shops, but they sell everything else online anyway. So there's really no need. I go in there more just to chat to my mates or the staff.
You go in when I'm traveling just to see what I can find that I can't find anyplace else. But that's the only reason. When I go to the local liquor store here, it's usually just to get beer and wine.
Yeah, it's highly regulated in states like Virginia, where they have specific shops, regulated and managed by the government, called ABCs. And those have also been taken quite a hit on restraint in terms of reopening. As well in New York City, you can buy, spirits and wine within like separate shops that are not necessarily controlled or regulated by the government, which is great. But again, to our problem that we have in the United States, it's every state is operating independently of the other.
And PT points out the ACSA, the American Craft Spirits Association, is working with the state guilds on getting direct-to-consumer shipping, and they're making a bit of progress. Yeah, it's, for instance, Virginia, which is a control state, where the state runs everything, allowed its distilleries in the state to ship directly to consumers now during the crisis. So that works out just fine. And they may leave it in place once things end, as long as everybody can prove that they can handle it responsibly. Luna says, can you buy booze on Amazon in the U.S.? My local dealers just now. Nope, that's the one thing you can't buy on Amazon in the States is alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, we're lucky in the UK we can buy alcohol on Amazon. I mean, we're just an alcoholic country, really. We can buy it.
We have shops like Luvian's locally, great selection and receiving strong local support. Greg, but for this difficult time, I went to some local shops to support them, buy some rosé wines and a bottle of whiskey, and they enjoyed it. Also to have a little talk, even with social distancing. That's one thing that you can't replace with online shopping, is just that interaction. And being able to talk to a clerk and find out what's new and find out what just came in, or the rare recommendation that they might have that you might not have heard about. And
absolutely.
Recommendations are going to solve that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I started drinking whiskey, and there was a guy in Dinopolis where the original Whisky Exchange was. And for some reason, our palates just clicked. So if I wanted to go and buy something, I needed to talk to that one person, because I knew he understood my palate and he gave me the best information. And that doesn't happen so often these days.
And as Laddie points out, Amazon does do whiskey in Germany. And I think they do it in the UK too. Or was it eBay? And no, I don't think eBay does.
No.
I think eBay does in mainland Europe, but in the UK, they stopped it about 8 years ago or 9 years ago, selling alcohol on eBay. But I think some European countries, you can buy alcohol still on eBay.
And Malt Mariners points out, Amazon in Germany, as he says, we're quite easy with booze in Germany. Yep. Having been to Germany a couple of times.
We're pretty puritanical in America.
Yep. Tom Smith says, hey all, love the show. On a lighter note, Colin, did you shoot skeet after tasting or before? So did you get a powder note shooting skeet and the whiskey?
Yeah, no, we drank the whiskey afterwards. I wouldn't have been able to shoot quite so straight had I been shooting with whiskey inside me already. I love ski. It's great. I've been doing it for a very long time. I don't get so many chances to do it these days. But yeah, I started off in my teens and ended up in my early 20s doing game plays at World Championships when I was living in East Africa. So I've got a bit of practice.
Great comment here from Greg. For instance, I was happy to find at that local shop a Royal Bracklet 12-year-old Cadenhead's Cask-Strength that he hadn't tried, but was interested in the official tasting notes. The shop didn't know about it, but I detected, quote, potentiality. And Whiskey Throttle, I love talking with new whiskey lovers that are trying to find something new to try and talk about their choices. I've often sold more bottles than the staff. I've done that as well. As a matter of fact, our youngest daughter did that on her 21st birthday when she turned legal. She was a student in Boston, and on her birthday, when she became legal, she went and spent her own money to buy a bottle of Redbreast 12-year-old. And they had 3 more bottles, and she basically sold the other 3 bottles for the store to other customers in the store saying, you need to try this and you need to buy it. And
fantastic.
I mean, and that's the biggest shame though, when, with restaurants and bars closed down. I find, for me, particularly as a food writer, the most on the ground tasting that I do are at restaurants and bars, speaking with the beverage director, speaking with the sommelier. Yes, I could get all this information online, but without their enthusiasm, their almost, urgency. Hey, Marisel, you should try this with this, or, let's pop open a new bottle and let's try it together. That engagement is lost on so many people, which is why I think, there's going to be a huge hit in gastronomy and the culinary world if we don't have, bar to bar interactions, tableside interactions with our somms, with the beverage experts that are on the ground, because it's very easy to get disengaged as a consumer when you don't have that interpersonal connection. You can try it in real time. We're chatting here now, but there's something about human connection that's inextricably related to our food and drink, and that's what we're missing.
right, you can have the sensory experiences with food and drink, but it's that atmospheric influence that really, I think, makes the difference. Greg points out he knows the feeling we've all been talking about. His local supermarket owes him a lot of money on his advice to totally lost customers left with no help. Dave Kuhn, I love talking to people in liquor stores about whiskey. I usually don't point them to the last couple of bottles of certain things, though. Dave, that's fish. And as Bob Wenning points out, whiskey is a social drink, and as much as I love the drink, I miss the conversation and the people more. Michael Caldwell, great point. I end up in so many great conversations in the spirits store. There's always someone looking for a special gift or to try something new, me included. And Malt Mariners, I know the feeling. We can't help it as whiskey ambassadors, right? And I think we're all ambassadors in a certain way. Even you're not being paid by a brand. When you're out there in a store and you're trying to help somebody else out, you're helping them. You're actually serving as an ambassador for whiskey in general, and it always pays about others.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I really love Keepers of the Quake, recognizing people who are out there supporting Scotch in general, not just any particular brands, just Scotch in general. People who work in marketing, people who work in sales, and who are generally supporting Scotch across the world. I think, Keepers of the Quake it's a fantastic organisation, and I don't know. There are members now. There are many more members outside Europe, I think, than there are in Europe, which is great. It's a proper international organisation. There are loads in the States.
Sorry, I was just checking back to see if I'd heard anything back from Martine. So apparently, she did not see the email, or did not, or was just not going to be able to join us, which is a shame. But which one is that one now that you're pouring? Oh, that's yours.
Shameless promotion. Actually, no, it's all sold out, unfortunately. But that's the whiskey that we produced. It was a 17-year-old blended malt that we did for the 3 drinkers. It came from a company who owns a very new, shiny distillery that's been very lauded in Speyside. And that group is where we got the whiskey from, which gives people a reasonable idea of what's inside the bottle. So we did that 17-year-old malt at £40.
But it's
Sorry?
It's a blended malt, right? So it was teaspoon something then, right?
Yeah, it's actually what we think is that it was from 3 distilleries, and that when the new make was produced, I had a really good long discussion about this when I was tasting it with Charlie McLean, and we reckon that they took the 3 new make spirits and they blended them and put them into the barrels. So we reckon, so this is not truth, we reckon that it's Glenrothes, Highland Park, and Glenturret, and that they put it into the cask 17 years ago as 3 different spirits, rather than blending 3 casks later on. That's what we reckon happened, and there's decent enough history to be able to know that went on. Talk to Roddy Cox about it.
And that was a good dram, because I know your people sent me a sample of it, and I really enjoyed drinking
it.
it.
You got it? Oh, yeah. Fantastic. I didn't realize. That's great. I'm so glad you got to taste it.
So Luna Point has a good question that I think would be great for you, Marisel. Good question here. How is the ordering out industry for delivering food now in New York? Here in the Netherlands, it's booming. I'm assuming that pretty much that's all anybody's doing right now is takeout and delivery in New York, right?
It's definitely up, so is Instacart, and when grocery delivery services are pretty much a competitive sport, what else do you turn to than delivery or takeout? So yes, those are up here in New York. But again, this brings in a bit of a contentious subject, which is the commissions that the third-party delivery platform services are imposing upon establishments and bars as well. Some of them can be as high as 30% of the entire retail order, which, there was a famous pizza parlor in Chicago where the gentleman of the establishment made around, let's say, like $1,000 retail from his delivery and orders. But at the end of the day, his net profit was somewhere in the ballpark of 300 because of the insane commissions that third-party delivery were taking from the entirety of its cost. So yes, it's up, but it's very much undercutting and underserving food service operators on all counts. So we've actually had to have government step in to put a cap on these insane commissions. But you're seeing a lot more home cooking. Everyone's now trying to be their own best top chef. But what I think we're going to see relatively as states open up is, very, very, very slowly, because people are scared. They're going to start returning to restaurants. But again, New York City, we are in quarantine through June. So we're going to be the last state to open up.
How is it in London these days?
With cooking and home cooking and so on, I think that everybody is very similar to New York, actually. People are cooking a lot more at home, taking raw ingredients and trying to do it for themselves. It's one of those things that you always sort of say to yourself, oh, I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to start cooking things from scratch. And you never really get around to it. But this has given people an opportunity to do that in the privacy of their own homes. It's not for dinner parties or anything like that. So they can muck it up. They can make mistakes, and they can learn from them, and they can create brilliant things off the back of it. So yeah, hopefully, I think there'll be a lot more home cooking in the future too.
The thing that I like to point out, whenever I'm speaking to someone, is it's really tough for establishments that were designed for brick and mortar foot traffic to operate on a delivery and takeout model. They simply just were not built for that purpose. And adapting is not as simple as just evolving. You have to completely restructure your entire business model in order to meet this new, it's like putting a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, we've had the same thing in the UK, but mainly with suppliers. So if you supply meat, and you used to supply meat to the supermarkets, and then the supermarkets now have got systems for delivery, that's no problem. But what if you're a meat supplier to the entree, to the restaurants and so on? Yeah. Suddenly, bang, your business is gone. And we've seen businesses here scrabble around to try and get things together, and they're getting there. We've got a couple of big markets in London, Fish Market and Smithfield's Meat Market, where the different retailers in those markets have clubbed together to start doing deliveries so that they can domestically send out large amounts of meat. You've still got to buy quite a lot, so you need to have a freezer. But that's starting to happen. I hope that actually once the lockdown's finished, that as domestic consumers, we'll still be able to go direct to market to be able to buy our meat, because it's cheaper, let's be honest, and the quality is fantastic.
Absolutely.
And we have a good comment from Ashley Penny. Seen a video of an Irish bar in Zurich that is opened with social distancing in place that looks really strange. Pubs with restaurants to open earlier. We will see how that goes. And you've probably seen the video of these places along the Maryland shore where they've got people with the big inner tubes around them.
Oh gosh, no.
Because the inner tube is 3 feet on each side, so everybody's wearing the inner tube. You've got 6 feet automatically to get you in between each other. And I'm just thinking.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the Little Shop of Horrors. That is the beautiful, incredible establishment, the Little Inn at Washington, where they're using mannequins in order to fill the dining room to make it feel more comfortable to consumers. But I rather think it looks a bit of like a horror movie set. I would not be dining there. And I'm thinking, gosh, really hope that this does not catch on to any other bars or restaurants, because it's just not a great idea.
There's a restaurant in Thailand that's using big stuffed pandas instead of mannequins. And
we won't even go into the South Korean soccer stadium and what they did.
Oh, I'm going to have to Google that now, Mark. I'm intrigued.
You can Google it. We're not going to go there. But,
I'm going to put an incognito browser on them.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been fun. I wish Clay could have joined us. We will get him back on a future episode on the Friday night happy hour for our Writers Roundtable. Marisel Salazar from Spirits Network and MSG Networks. You can also find her on Twitter. Where can people find you?
Twitter on Marisel Salazar, and then on Instagram, where I'm much more lively. Twitter, I live my best life, and then Instagram, I live my best visual life, Marisel M. Salazar. And you can catch up with all the behind the scenes that we are shooting for Spirits Network and Driven to Dine on MSG Network. Okay, and Colin, where can people find out more about the Three Drinkers and your own work, because you do more than just that?
Yeah, I do. I write for lots of different people as well. I still love writing. With the Three Drinkers, threedrinkers.com or at the Three Drinkers on Instagram, at the Three Drinkers on Twitter. But everything's sourced from our website. And also the ballot for Redbreast, for example, you can find that through our website. We do a lot of writing on our website. We link to all the magazines that we write to as well. That's the best hub for everything. And of course, Amazon Prime. Just go and type in the Three Drinkers and our TV show will come up. And I hope you get a chance to watch and enjoy it.
And there's an episode with you, Adi and Helena, that we did a while back over in the UK that's on the website at whiskycast.com too.
I remember it well.
Just stick with me for just a second here and we will say goodbye to everybody. Great point here from Dave Kuhn at the end. Of course, the Isla Festival would have started this weekend, would have started tomorrow, in fact, with Lagavulin open day. We did find out today that Lagavulin and Kalila will have online celebrations for Fayagil on the Facebook on Saturday and on Monday for Kalila. We have links to those at the WhiskyCast website. And Dave Kuhn points out that if people are in a position and they're concerned about the people of Isla, there is a GoFundMe to raise money for the Isla Resilience Fund, and it's worthwhile donating. This week is always each year, the big week for the businesses on Isla, the lodging, the folks that run Airbnbs, the restaurants and the pubs would have made most of their money just from this week alone to get them through the entire year. And it is going to be a rough year for the folks on Isla. So if you're able to help out, also, if you want to support the U.S. Bartenders Guild Foundation and their Bartenders Emergency Assistance Program, the Drinks Trust and the Ben in the UK, and any of the other charities that are working to help people that have been affected by the pandemic, by the lockdowns, and are are suffering economically, if you're in a position to help, I'm sure those folks would appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday with our Whiskey Wednesday webcast, and join us again next Friday at 5 p.m. New York time, 10 p.m. London time, 2100 GMT for another happy hour webcast. We will also have, as always, the WhiskyCast podcast this weekend. Look for it Sunday night, Monday morning. Remember, we're starting a 3-day holiday weekend in the U.S., so enjoy, be responsible, be safe out there. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone. Good night.